a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we'll then certify.
And we need to certify now. So we need a motion to certify that all that we talked about was personnel matters.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's do the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know.
All right, exactly.
Put them on the spot.
I need a motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Please, the mic's still working.
Okay.
Microphone check.
There we go.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have recognitions.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank everyone for being here this evening. We have a full house for June school board meeting, so we're excited about that. I do have a few recognitions for this evening. First, I would like to start with saying congratulations to the class of 2023. We had a wonderful graduation ceremony, and we are so proud of our graduates, and a special thanks to Ms. Laura and all the hard work that she did as a senior sponsor. Graduation was well attended, and we know that the sky is the limit for our graduates as they go out into the world. I also would like to recognize our Department of the Month. So for the month of June, we are recognizing the Technology Department. So we are recognizing Mr. Ron Metzger and Mr. Steve Seward for all of their work that they do to keep us up and going with technology. Special thanks to Mr. Seward as he's sitting in the back. He can wave his hand to it for us. Definitely, as we have moved in the direction to start streaming our school board meetings, Mr. Seward has been instrumental in that process. So we want to thank him for all of his work and all of the work that Mr. Metzger does behind the scenes within our technology department. The next person that I would like to recognize, I want to formally recognize this person even though they are not here with us tonight. But in May, it was announced that Dr. Dave Daniel will be leaving West Point. Dr. Daniel has been in West Point for the last 12 years, serving as middle school principal, as the director of technology, integration, and innovation, and also as the principal of West Point Middle School and High School. And so we want to thank Dr. Daniel for all of his work, all of his efforts that he has placed here in West Point, and we wish him the best in his next endeavor as superintendent of Matthews County Public Schools. And finally, at our last school board meeting, we recognized our retirees. Well, there was one retiree that could not be with us that night, and that was because he was with his tennis team in Northampton. And so I would like for Mr. Babarji to come forward. And we want to thank Mr. Babarji for 30 dedicated years to West Point Public Schools and to this community. Can we give Mr. Babarji? You do not find educators that are as passionate and committed as Mr. Babarji is. Anytime you called on Mr. Babarji to do something, and sometimes you didn't even have to call him, he was still there. He did anything he was ever asked to do, plus some. He has been an asset to the school division, and we are grateful for every year that you have been here. And like I told you a few weeks ago, the door is always open. And anytime you want to come back, whether it's for a visit or to stay, the door is open here. because we appreciate you and we love you. Thank you for all that you've done for us here in West Point.
Thank you very
So I'm
much.
going to present you with And so for your service here to the division, we appreciate you. And if you want to say something, you can.
I would say thank you very much for allowing me to be part of the school system. Thank you very much for trusting me with your students. Thank you for making me grow as a professional in the school system. The only thing I want to add, please do not take it as negative. I mean, we do a great job, all the teachers teaching these kids beyond, with a book, passing the test and everything else. But we really need to do a good job with teaching them beyond the walls of West Point. We have a crisis that occurred about a few months ago with an earthquake that hit Turkey, where 35,000 people died in Syria. The earthquake was so severe that actually they felt it all over between England, all the way to Syria, all the way to Lebanon, all the way to Palestine, and not one single mention to our students about what can we do to help those people beyond our community. This is something that we need to teach our students. That's the only thing I want to add to the statements. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, that ends my recognitions.
Okay, next up are presentations, and our first one is the 2023 Summer Academy Recap, and that's Mrs. Gay and Mr. Smith.
Right, good afternoon again. We will present on our Summer Academy. We had just concluded, and it was good. It was great, just like last year. So we're going to do a quick recap, and then we'll kind of go into the data that we got afterwards. So again, we had pre-K through 8 students. It was June 5th through the 8th, and then 12th through the 15th, Monday through Thursday, from 8:30 to 2:30. 2 weeks for most students. Some of the middle school students were attending just 1 week for reading or math, whichever that they needed. And then we had report cards, 1 through 3 scoring for K through 2, and then 1 through 4 scoring for 3rd through 8th grade, with a post-assessment score at the end. Okay, so we just kind of put in just some examples of how the report cards look. We had some the standards. The teachers put the standards in with their 1 through 3 or 1 through 4, and then their pre and post assessment scores as well.
All right, so as we showed you, I guess last month we were here, this is how we kept attendance. The teachers this year actually filled it in for us. We created this document that they could just do a drop-down menu of present and absent, and that way we could keep track of the hours that students attended.
All right. So,
and then the pre-assessment and post-assessment, we gave it that all teachers gave a pre-assessment on the first day. Our English and math teachers in the middle school gave one the first day, and then of the middle of the they did one in the middle of the 2 weeks, and then they did one at the end of the second week. The post-assessment. That way we could kind of see if a kid left us after the first week, did they progress that first week, and then hopefully they made gains from that Thursday to the next Thursday.
and we used SOL strands, K through 2. We took strands from Mrs. Upshaw. She was the one who went ahead and researched, see what the kids needed to work on. And then 3rd through 8, we used the SOLs. Pre-K used the kindergarten screening for a pre-assessment and then a post-assessment. So the next 3 slides that we're going to show you are just example. These are actually from the data sheets that we have that Dr. Hauser or Mr. Leach can give you. We sent them to the whole data sheet. And you can see, so K through 2 did something a little bit different with their pre-assessment. They did, like, for example, kindergarten gave reading and writing combined, pre-assessment and then post-assessment at the end. 1st and 2nd grade did a combination of like words per minute and word identification. So as for the pre-assessment, we saw how many words they knew coming in and then how many words they knew going out. For 3rd through 5th, it was a little bit more basic. They gave a pre-assessment at the very beginning. Most teachers gave about 10 questions and then gave a post-assessment at the end as well.
Okay, and then the same thing for 6 through 8, except for we had 1 math and 1 English, so they had to combine all of the 6 through 8 strands. They kind of overlapped depending on, we kind of saw a pattern of what were weaknesses within the students that attended. So they were able to create their pre and post assessment based off of the SOL strands. And they did focus on some writing as well. That's not up there, but their reading portion included writing.
And then as far as the data and how we saw growth, most grades saw some good growth. Most reading and math had 100%. If I put an asterisk there, that just meant that the kids scored really high on their pre-assessment, and we see that a lot of times. If they score 100, it's like hard to get another 100 on top of that. But overall, we saw some good growth. We felt like that the kids grew over these 8 days. It's hard to see a whole lot of growth, but what this just means is that these kids scored higher on their post-assessment than they did on their pre-assessment.
And our teachers, like, shout out to the ones that came and worked those 8 days. They were planned every single day. They were prepared. Kids were working the entire time. We saw a lot of really engaging, fun activities as well as learning, but they were going nonstop. The kids were happy. We didn't have any real issues, and we think the 2 weeks went really well overall. So kudos to our teachers because they did a really good job.
All right, any questions?
I noticed something with the 3rd grade reading, and now I'm not gonna be able to tell you what it was. I remember there was some issue I saw, and it could have been just a few students. Just wondering what happens now with the post-assessment as you go forward into this coming school year.
So all of this stuff can be shared out. We can share it with the teachers. On the school level, we have data sheets that we track them all year long. So they can take this data and end of the year data from last school year to see if some of these things align and see what things need to be worked on, in 4th grade.
Did all of the, students that were invited or asked to attend, did we have pretty good attendance as far as,
This first week,
what is our attendance?
our first week was great. Second week, a few kids dropped off here or there. They only came like 3 days instead of the 4. Middle school's a little bit harder to get them to show up. But the ones that did, they came and they were there the full time. A couple of them just didn't show back up after the first day, but those that really needed it were there. And we were kind of impressed that they made it the 8 days, so we were excited about that.
Yeah, super impressed with the pre-K as well,
Yes.
because some of those students have not come into a school setting yet. So some of those kids, in the morning they were a little upset. We would get them in, and then by the end of the day they were fine. It's just getting them in the door. Plus it was at middle school, high school, so a little bit bigger area, so that But for the most part, kids showed up. We would call if they were not there. Most of the time, there were a few students that we ended up getting in the building after making the call. But then there were some others that just didn't answer or just didn't show up. So, but overall, it was good attendance.
Other questions?
So
Okay.
not only would I want to shout out our teachers for their phenomenal job with our students, but also I want to shout out these 2 fine up-and-coming administrators. They did a wonderful job. They did not need the help and the support from central office and the buildings. They were able to keep things going, and that's what we want as we continue to grow our future leaders. So kudos to both of you for a job well done.
Okay, our next presentation is indoor track and sports clubs, and Ms. Amy O'Neill is going to do that one.
coaches come on up here, please. I've brought with me some of our track coaches. They're spectacular. We're very fortunate to have these guys. Mr. Kenneth McDaniel, Mr. Don Mollenauer, and Mr. Gary Booker. Between them, they have numerous years of experience, and that we're very, very thankful to have them on our side. I'm gonna tell you what I'm looking for, and they're gonna answer any questions that you may have, tell you a little bit about indoor. I know that you two have done indoor for a long time, so they will be able to tell you everything you do. We are proposing that we establish an indoor track team. Like I had said before, I think it was last month that or maybe the month before, Reese Kirkland had opened the doors for this, where he had asked to perform under the West Point name, and he was very successful. And we said, you know, why not do it with a team? And what we need is not very much money as far as like uniforms. They can use the track uniforms, the cross country uniforms. They're the same. Outdoor practice, which is new to me. I used to do indoor track way 100 years ago, but it's outdoor facilities is what we use for indoor track. The transportation, we would not have any more transportation costs. The meets are on Saturday. I would assume parents could take their children to the indoor meets, but if we may need some transportation on Saturdays, that may be a possibility. They typically do maybe like 5 meets is all they do, 4 or 5 meets. So, and it's not at home because we don't have the facilities here, but typically it's at Boo Williams in Hampton or like Arthur Ashe Center in Richmond. So there's not a whole lot of traveling really far away to go to these meets. I will let them answer any questions that you have for this, and then I'll go on to my sports clubs after that. But we would like to establish this this coming winter to get it off the ground. We know that we have approximately 10, probably more kids that may be interested in doing it. It's running, it's field events, so it's everything. And we're fully qualified to do that. So if you guys will step up so you guys can answer any questions or talk about anything.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I've coached indoor track for a while, and we found the reason we went to indoor track in Newport News was we needed something to tie the kids over that went to have participated in a fall sport and then participated in a spring sport, and it was a time frame, especially in the cold, where the kids weren't involved in anything. If you didn't make the basketball team, tough luck. So what we did was we created indoor track, and it's perfect for that environment. If you have a football player and he just sits around during the winter, he gets fat, he needs to run, this is a perfect situation for him. If you have a baseball player that needs to work on his quickness, this is a perfect place to do it. It really is beneficial for the kids who are sort of left out in the cold, and literally in the winter. That's why I think the program is special. Coach was talking about the cost factor. The only implement that is different in indoor track from outdoor track is the shot put. And the reason it's different is because you're throwing it indoors. You do not want to steal ball hitting the floor. So we will need to buy shot puts. I don't know how much shot put indoors is nowadays, but it's not that much. Uniforms are already taken care of. Coach will talk about the pole vault. We've already got that done. It is a completely different sport, even though it says it's track, there's different distances. So you have, instead of 200, you have a 300. Instead of a 400, you have a 500. Instead of an 800, you got 1,000. Instead of a 4x1 relay, you have a 4x2 relay. We do not have the discus indoors. Sorry, Maddie. We don't have the discus. So let's see what I was going to tell you. So that's the primary reason why it's really beneficial to the kids. Let's see what else. I don't know. Do you have any other comments, questions?
Yeah, like Coach Molly, I've been around indoor and outdoor track and cross country for 30-some years, and I will say that, as he said, it's really great to have indoor because kids coming out of cross country, they're not going to play basketball, or there's very limited sports here during the winter time. So indoor track is really good for that, and it helps keep them in shape for outdoor track or another sport that is available during the spring. my specialty is the pole vault. And as far as cost about that, well, one thing is I bring all the poles with me already, so it's not really a cost for West Point to have them. One thing Amy touched on was it wouldn't be about 5 meets. And then one of the things that, you know, we might propose is actually using our outdoor track. I know at some of the other schools that I've been at, we did what's called polar bear meets where we ran on Wednesdays. We ran outside, as long as the weather was above 45. We did it at Atlee, Lee Davis, and other places like that. So that also helps cut down on the cost and traveling. And I know with a lot of the other 1A schools in the area, we talked to them, and they would be more than happy to maybe come to West Point to do polar bear meets. So, so that would help out a lot with cost.
There is one other thing too. When I was at Menchfield, we had a problem with the kids being outside. The track was away from the gym. So if those kids went outside and it was 20 and 30 degrees out, that was a little bit too cold. 40 to 30 degrees, the kids had a long way to go. So what we had and what West Point has, and I don't think they even realize it, is you've got the perfect facility. You can create an outdoor environment in which the kids can get underneath that awning where the bus is and run around that circle right there to get their conditioning in. And then when after they do their run, they go inside, get warm, whatever happens, and then you get another group. So you can put them in a situation where there's not danger for frostbite, which is sort of scary in indoor track, but that's it. Let's see what else. Coach was saying the polar bear meets, those cost nothing, okay? The only problem with those meets are you don't really run on an indoor track facility. The only indoor track facilities, what Ms. Owens was talking about, are the colleges. Liberty has one, George Mason has one, Virginia Beach has one, Roanoke has one. No high school has an indoor facility, which is a 200-meter bank track. So when they go to a big meet, which is what Reese did, that's where they get a chance to run on those big tracks. If they go to the Nationals, it's on a short 200-meter track, and they need to be used to doing that. What else? Any other questions? It's worth your money. It's worth your money. And if I may say one other thing completely unrelated to this. I'm a member of the Virginia Track Coaches Association, and I would highly recommend that the school board pay the $35 for West Point High School to be a member of that association. It's beneficial in many ways. Number one, the coaches are covered by insurance according to this. They get a technical manual. And last but not least, it can be beneficial to the students. Ms. Kirkland received a $1,000 scholarship from our organization. Didn't cost her a penny. Because I was a member, and now West Point was a member, bang, she's in. Reese applied for it, and unfortunately he didn't make it. But we've got a lot of other kids coming up. Taz is going to be a good example. He's going to be one I think should be pushing for it. So that $35 covers the entire program, and if you get one kid, it's $1,000. So may I recommend that you put that in maybe the head coach's stipend or something?
What was that called again?
It's the Virginia Track Coaches, VTCA, Virginia Track Coaches Association. I'll be more than, I run the website, so I'll be more than glad to show it to you. We have a clinic going on this weekend, as a matter of fact, at East Mennonite. It's a very good one. They're having a lot of college coaches come in. It's just a really good situation. For some reason, though, we're not getting young kids involved in it like we used to. I mean, when I was a young kid, that was a great situation. We used to have a really good time at those clinics. It was a learning experience, but we got to meet people. And for some reason, we're not getting kids involved in it like we used to. And I really would love some information on how to do that. How do you get young teachers, coaches to get involved in it? We got good clinics. The schools get to go to a very good meet. We conduct 3 meets out of the year. One meet is going to be usually held as a cross-country meet. Another meet is held at BMI, and the third meet is held in the spring. We could not do it this year because we still had after effects from COVID. But that's how we get our money. That's how we can give it back to the scholarships. And it's just a great deal.
Ms. O'Neill, if you provide me with the information, we can take care of it.
I'll be glad to give you a website, btca.online. But I'll be glad to do that.
We'll take care of it.
Do you have any individual questions? Okay.
I have a question, but I think it's for Ms. O'Neill, not for you guys.
So my question is, what are we paying our coaches for this?
We have volunteer head coach. He's gonna volunteer this year. Next year, probably have to put a stipend in the program.
So all three of these wonderful gentlemen are volunteering their time for our first indoor season, is what you're telling me?
I
Yep.
definitely am.
I gotta work on my wife for that.
He wants to retire, but we won't let him. But thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it.
So what we will do for the indoor track piece, Ms. O'Neill will write up her formal request, and we will include that in the board agenda for next month as a action item.
Awesome. Okay, and how do I do the presentation at the bottom? Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do is talk to you guys about, I know most of us realize that not having middle school sports is an issue. I know that the middle schoolers want to participate in sports. I want them to participate in sports. We have limited facilities to do our sports at the high school and the middle school sports, and that's something I'm looking into right now also. But so I tried to come up with something that I could offer to get them, give them a little taste of what the high school sports is like, and give them a little bit of experience. So when they come up there to like 8th grade, 9th grade, they're not completely inexperienced and have to take the time to actually learn the sport. So we thought about intramurals, and to me, I think intramurals can be great, but in my opinion, I think intramurals, when I think of intramurals from what I have experience with, it's kind of chaotic and it's kind of like everybody does their own thing kind of deal. I really would like to do, and this is for informational purposes only, so again, if it's something that you have to act on, I can put it in the next meeting too, I guess. But anyway, so we have come up with a few of the sports that we offer at the high school that we think can translate over from the middle schoolers participating. We already have a run club. We have, and what I'm proposing is to put these clubs like 8th period, so there's no transportation extra costs. I'm hoping to talk about getting teachers involved again. I'm hoping during 8th period, where they may not want to take a 3-month or 12-month sometimes sport, and they may want to coach a limited amount of time during 8th period. So, because I know that we have a lot of valuable people at the high school and middle school that have done sports and coached sports, and I think that it would be really good to utilize them. Basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, soccer, tennis are the things that we kind of were tossing around. A couple of people that were interested in it, Sue and I were, Ed Ritchie and Mike Henrich. We've been kind of tossing this around, and if you do it during the season, during 8th period, you're not using the fields during the actual practices and games, but you're using it during 8th period, you instill that excitement in the sport, so they'll come and they'll participate in rooting the teams on, and then kind of just fall in love with it, and that's what I'm hoping that they'll do. Okay. Who, and I'm saying middle schoolers because the 6th and 7th graders don't have an opportunity to play sports, the 8th graders do. And like I said, when 8th period, and like I said, during the season of the sport. Now, the 8th period is, as you know, a detention or remediation period as well. So obviously, if you have to do one of those, then you wouldn't be able to go to the sports clubs that day. We're offering 3 days a week, so we figured to start off just a few days a week, soccer one day or track one day and tennis or something like that, and in no particular order other than the season. Where we have practice fields, we have gym, we've got all that's available because it's 8th period. So, and it's just, I know since I've been here, and I've heard also before that there's been numerous requests. I get them constantly about middle school sports. And my soccer coach, and he's very eager and wonderful and love him, he kind of jumped the gun a little bit and put out papers to establish this co-ed soccer. So if you see that around, we're doing it the proper way. So we're going to go back a little bit. But this forms that were turned in, I bet you every 6th and 7th grader turned a form in. So I know that they're very eager to do something like this, and I think it would be really helpful for them too. The advantages. Well, obviously we need to get our middle schoolers to have access, and I know that the Y does some really good programs too, but I feel like as a school system we need to offer those things too. Again, serves as to teach the enthusiasm and the rules of the sport. I know as a high school basketball coach, I had some kids that came in, and we had a theater program, would come in 11th grade and say, I want to learn how to play basketball in a varsity sport. So I'm trying to sort of eliminate that, because it is really hard when you get competitive to actually teach the basics, fundamentals, the very beginning, 101 type stuff. Again, teaching the sports during the same season as the high school will inspire them to attend games, will inspire them to love the game. Again, the teachers, I've got probably 6 or 7 teachers that I'm thinking of that would, if they're willing, because of their experience, that I feel like they'd be really good for this program. And again, no additional transportation needed, because they can just catch the bus after each period. Here are a few of the people that I've kind of put their name up there without asking, but these are people that have experience. This is my wish list of the people in the building that have coached a sport that I feel like they may be interested, as long as it's state period. And cost. We don't have, since it's a club, we have a couple of clubs that we don't have a sponsor for. We don't have a club like forensics and a couple other things. I was thinking of possibly having a club head or a club sponsor that could maybe give the stipend to keep it rolling. Not like, I don't know, at first. I'm hoping that I can get everybody on board. Let's see how this goes to volunteer first the first year and see how it happens. I don't know. We wouldn't need any extra equipment. We've got PE equipment. We wouldn't need the referees costs, the uniforms costs, the additional transportation costs. I just feel like it's a real win-win, because it's as you know, referees costs are $20,000 a year for the high school. So if you add additional onto that, so I'm proposing not to really have games, but learn more like camp situations where you're learning fundamentals and you're learning the rules and those kind of things. And that's it. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I love this so much. I myself have been talking about how we don't really have really good athletic programs for our kids until they're in high school, and then we don't have them developed. So it's like we're struggling to get kids for JV football and for JV baseball and softball and girls soccer and all of these sports that soccer is a pretty strong program in the area in general, but these other ones, it seems like we really do need something. Plus, if you keep kids occupied, it tends to yield better academic results, better behavior, better sense of community, just all around. So I love it.
Well, great. And I know that teaching the middle schoolers, I know that they're like yearning for something like this. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, group, do you want to put this under study? Until next time, or do we need to discuss further?
Because we are proposing for this to be a club, sports clubs, this does not need board approval. We're able to start clubs at the school level without board approval. And it seems like we've heard from one board member. It seems like one board member is in support of this. So I believe after talking with Ms. O'Neill, that this is something that the division can definitely support, and we will do all that we can to start growing and putting something in place.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
The next presentation is an item under study, and that is Mrs. Ball and Mrs. Saunders.
I feel like we got set up. Gotta follow behind at that. It's not the fun stuff. So, we are presenting the code of conduct for you guys to review, and hopefully approve at the next meeting. And so we were asked to point out just some of the differences. There are not many, and they are not major, so it makes it a little bit easier for us to present. All right, so we'll start. In the past, we have had homecoming and prom on Friday nights. Now they are occurring on Saturday nights. We have moved prom, and we will be moving the homecoming dance back to Saturday night for this coming year. So we have had a policy in place in the code of conduct that students had to attend all day the day of those events. Now, since they are not on a school day, we don't have a need to have that. So we're removing that, or proposing that we remove that if you all approve. In addition, excessive or unexcused absences may result in loss of privileges. We have several items going on in relation to our sports handbook and our code of conduct, where if we have a student who's missing a huge amount of school, maybe not attending or doing certain things because they need to get in the classroom and they need that extra instruction. We have had a lot of feedback. We formed a discipline committee with our teachers and admin, and recommended that if a student accumulates 3 or more tardies for a class period, that he or she will be assigned an after-school detention. We had some issue with tardies and ATS assignments in the past, so we're trying to move away from that and move those into detentions. We also have plans to reinvigorate our detention and ATS systems. So hopefully we'll see some changes in those this year as well. We also had a proposal to develop an email address that could be used for each school that families can use to communicate attendance. That way families will know exactly where to send those absence notes. Those, my kid is not going to be here, they have a doctor's appointment, they have this, they have that, and that takes it out of our secretary's emails and admin emails, so that they're all in one place.
Cell phones, we know this is a big one. So this is something that's already in the code of conduct, but students are not permitted to use cell phones while class is in session. So this includes while in the hallway and while in the bathroom during class. This is not something that we have I guess, interpreted in this way and so implemented in this way, but this is something that we are proposing for the coming year. And so students who are found using cell phones in those areas during class time are subject to discipline consequences, specifically detentions. And that is really just to maximize class time and to minimize the work avoidance, class avoidance.
I love it.
And restroom trips.
I know it's understudy, but I love that.
Sorry, magic. It's not going to be loved by everybody. The next one is Saturday detentions that were listed as a level 2 consequence. That's something that we are proposing to be removed. That's not something that we've utilized in recent years. And then repeated infractions at one level resulting in escalating consequences at a higher level. This past year we had at 4 detentions, 4 after-school detentions, students then were issued an ATS. And that was to try to deter kind of the minor behaviors that, I can get all of the detentions without further consequence. So we are asking that that be added into the code of conduct. And then, as it says, like a second offense at a level 2 may result in a level 3 consequence. So any sort of repeated infractions may progress to a higher level of consequence.
That's pretty easy. Any questions for us before we?
I always have questions. Okay, so first for the truancy, I don't disagree with it at all. But I'm wondering, it says may result in loss of privileges. So who decides at what point? Do we have any sort of specifics there for that? Because I feel if we leave it too vague, then that leads to well, that person's biased against me, or well, so-and-so did this and they didn't get in trouble, but then I did it and I did, etc. So is it going to be more specifically outlined as far as?
We can work on that.
Okay.
I do know we have the athletic handbook that is gonna have some specifics regarding athletes and how that applies to them. We can work on coming up with some situational, descriptions that we can use. And we'll also take recommendations. If you guys have thoughts, once you review, let us know what you think and we'll all work together to come up with something that works.
There's also something in the code of conduct that states that at 5 unexcused absences, we have to have an attendance plan. And so I think at 7, there has to be like an in-person meeting. So as part of that conversation and the plan, that might be part of the plan. So that's also something to consider.
I was probably one of those people you heard complain about the ATS for tardies. So I appreciate y'all getting rid of that. If our goal is to keep kids in the classroom, and that's why we're mad that they're tardy. My daughter was one of those habitual tardy people, so trust me, I understand. Pulling them out of the class for the whole time as a repercussion seems kind of counterintuitive, so I appreciate that. Have we thought about just taking away cell phones first events? In Gloucester, when we did it, just full disclosure, when we actually took away the cell phones, within less than a month, we no longer had a cell phone issue. Was that a discussion at the discipline committee?
I think the teachers would love to have the cell phones gone, but that will require you guys to let us know that that's what you want done and how you want it handled. We can do those things, but we need to know that it's being supported all the way up. Because that's that's not going to go over well with everyone initially. As much as I would love to do.
No, I hear you. You gotta be prepared to have the fight. And the last thing, the repeat infractions. Again, I agree with it. I see you say like a second offense at level 2 may result in a level 3. Can we get more specific on that as well? I think if the more clearly it's defined, the less I think issues we'll have with you guys enforcing it and superintendent supporting it and us supporting it, because then it's not like, again, Bob got 5 and I got 2, but I'm the one that got a more offense. So more specific is always better.
And I recognize that sometimes you can't be so specific, because if you write a policy with that in mind, then you'll always be writing more policies to enforce. So we recognize that it's a tightrope when you're doing it. So, thank you.
With new expectations, obviously, one of the challenges is consistent implementation of new expectations. So what's sort of the plan internally to get buy-in from everybody as these new expectations kind of go out, so that they're consistently enforced classroom to classroom?
The discipline committee is part of that, having teachers have a voice and representation in that. I think that some of our initiatives for starting the year, we have PLCs that we use. I think we're going to be spending a lot of time working on situations in those PLCs and learning how this teacher would handle it versus how this teacher thought it should be handled, and all coming to a consensus about that. We've already got that in the works that we've been planning. So I think hopefully by the time the kids arrive, we'll have some idea of where everybody is and that we're on the same page together.
I think the other piece to that ends up being courageous conversations, and being willing to have those courageous conversations when needed. And the other piece ends up being accountability. And so from the central office level, we will then be working with the school administration to then work with their teachers on those 2 things as well.
So this wasn't in your presentation, but I had it marked up on my thing. Dress code, was that discussed at all? Because I have a few concerns. So I'm all about a good dress code, trust me. All right, but I also have tried to shop for my daughter, and 6-inch inseams are pretty much impossible to find. So that's number one. Number two, I feel strongly if we're gonna have the policy, then we have to enforce it 100% of the time. And I don't think that it is being enforced 100% of the time. And then that's leading to, again, some issues. And this isn't like a dig at you guys. I work in a high school, so I know how it goes. But I feel like we need to make sure that our expectations are realistic and ones that we can actually enforce and follow through on, versus just like, oh, well, we've always said 6-inch inseams. Because if I believe 2 or 3 years ago, my daughter came and presented to the school board to change the dress code, and they did. And then we had COVID happen, and then everybody came back from COVID, and it was just decided that we weren't going to enforce the dress code because we had more important things to deal with. And again, that was the same policy where I work, so I understand it. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well now we're gonna go back to the 6-inch inseam. So, and again, I don't think it was enforced this school year. So I don't know if that came up in conversations. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I would much rather have 4-inch inseam or 5-inch inseam, and it's more realistic that parents can find that clothing for their daughters especially, and it can be reinforced, rather than we're sticking to 6-inch, but then we're not gonna actually dress code anybody.
Fair point. We can take that back to the discipline committee and talk about it. You guys can give us feedback. We'll try to come to something. Is fair enough?
Okay, seems like we certainly could vote on this tonight, but it seems like we need to keep this item under study because there's lots of work that you all need to continue to do on this, and then things that y'all can share with us at a later time once you've talked about it, and it gives us a little opportunity to think through it as well.
If possible, we would like, once the board packet is put out, we would like feedback on the code of conduct prior to the board meeting for next month. Because if we're able to get everything firmed up and vote on the code of conduct, because that will be our meeting before school starts. So
Consensus on continue to study, but to be prepared.
Absolutely.
In July to vote.
Absolutely. We did not want to bring it to the board tonight for the board to vote tonight, but if we're able to get that feedback after the committee goes back, then we would like to be able to vote on it next month.
I know, is it possible to get the packet a little bit sooner than the Friday before, so we have a good opportunity to analyze it and ask the questions and enough time for a Tuesday meeting? Because code of conduct, that's a big chunk to review.
We will try our best, even if we get you the code of conduct before, but I cannot promise publicly that we'll be able to get you that entire packet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and then our next item under study is the crisis manual. Mr. Walker.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight I had the opportunity to just kind of inform you all that we have been updating the crisis management plan for the 23-24 school year. That document, with the sensitive information that's contained in that document, it is confidential. We do have that housed here in this office, and I would encourage you all, if you would like to review that document, to reach out to Dr. Frazier to set up a time to come to the office to look that document over. But I have provided for you all as a printout. Mr. Leach, I think, provided for you all some. I think Mr. Leach was supposed to get you a printout. Oh. That printout, what it will highlight for you all is just some of the changes and additions that we made. The page number where those additions and changes were added. And these changes, specifically because of the information that I've received, that you all had a major overhaul, kind of putting this document together last year. A lot of that information is still very relevant. We did a lot of titles, making sure titles were updated, such as my position, making sure that names of titles were updated in that document. We also are going to have to in future dates look at some items that we will continue to add, such as when we hire a new principal, HR, those names obviously will need to be added to that document. As also after training with the Catapult EMS system that we are implementing next year, once we receive the training and we understand the procedures and processes and who is responsible for each one of those, we will need to add a section to that document as well to make sure that that's detailed and so that you all can review that. And then obviously as we move forward in discussion in regards to weapon detection, that would be something if we decide to move forward, we would also need to add a section to that document that again would detail the processes, procedures, and individuals and titles that would be responsible for those processes and procedures.
Mr. Walker, and so for board members, of course, the Crisis Plan 1 is not approved by the board because it is a working continuous document. Once things come up, we are always editing, revising, making changes. And so the packet will be available for your review. But like Mr. Walker said, as those things come up, as we solidify the weapons detection, as we solidify other things, we will then be adding to the document.
Thank you. All right. Item under study, the VSBA policy updates. We did go over some of these things last month. We can move that to an action item, or we can do further study.
That will be at the pleasure of the board.
I mean, same issues I had last month are the same issues. Nothing's changed. We don't have a definition of what cultural competency means, so I don't want to, excuse me, put that in here without an actual definition. I don't think it's fair to evaluate a superintendent on something that's super vague. It's not fair for him. It's not fair for us as a board. Anybody can interpret that 1,000 different ways. So until we address that, I would not be approving CBG for sure. And I think the other two are still same issue. So too broad of a stroke of authority for the management of funds, and I think the superintendent should still have oversight over the school's expenses and how they're paid.
So we can continue those. We can continue those under study for another month. But at some point we do have to vote.
Right. I just need some direction from the board as to what we want the wording to say, what the proposal is. So then we can move forward.
So I think we need a definition for cultural competency for a file for CBG.
Got you. I just wrote that down.
I think we leave DA and DGC as they were originally. I don't think we make any changes to them. And I looked in all the different codes, the legal references and everything else, and there was nothing that was changed in the legal language from the state that requires us to change the language in either of these policies.
So is that the direction from the board? I just want to make sure.
Would it be helpful for you to have feedback as far as what drove these revisions and where that came from?
I looked up the references. So at the bottom, it tells you the Code of Virginia legal references, and I don't see a need legally, right, to change it. And I think that, well, not that one, the other two. It just, again, turn this off so y'all can hear me at home. It says, the superintendent may be authorized by the school board, right, to make line item transfers within budgetary categories. We want to change it. This is recommending that we change it just to say the superintendent is authorized to make line item transfers within a major classification. I just think it's too broad of a stroke. and this isn't necessarily a thing against Dr. Frazier. This is, we're gonna have, potentially in the future, other superintendents and other people, and we just, having that maybe authorized by the school board gives us a little bit more oversight into what's going on there. And I don't see a legal reason why that needs to be changed. And then the other one, again, is saying that it's removing the responsibility of the superintendent to ensure school activity funds are being appropriately used and managed. I don't see why we need to change that. That should be one of the responsibilities of the superintendent. So unless anybody has a different understanding of those, I mean, that's just my take. And cultural competency, that's just a definition that we need to develop as a school board. What is our definition as West Point School Board of cultural competency?
I can agree about the cultural competency. I think it's good for us to flesh that out a bit. On the former of the two, DA and DGC, on DA, we get expenditures and revenue reports on a monthly basis. Dr. Frazier does a very nice job of keeping us informed about expenditures and how he sees fit to spend funds that are, in fact, at his discretion. Because, and there are audit processes in place for our school system. I mean, we are audited. It's not like, and we get grant funds and all those kinds of things. So for me, that doesn't seem like that particular policy doesn't feel like a stretch because we have so many safeguards in place. So I wouldn't be in favor necessarily of keeping that the same. I think that change is appropriate, and I think we have enough safeguards in place that shouldn't be a problem.
Are we allowed to chime in? Just a public comment on this? Question? No?
Delegations. At the end of the meeting, we have an opportunity for delegations.
Just that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other comments on those?
So I'm a optimistic person, but also skeptical of humans in general. And our we have had previous leadership that has shown that we have to be super cautious and not give broad strokes. And so again, this has nothing to do with Dr. Frazier specifically. This has to do with what we have experienced in West Point previously and what we may encounter in the future. And while it might seem really small and minor, right, saying may versus is a huge difference legally speaking. And I don't see the need to change the language. Unless somebody, Dr. Frazier or anybody else up here, can explain to me a specific reason why it needs to change, something that has prohibited Dr. Frazier from doing what he needs to do. I just don't see why we need to give that broad stroke. I'd rather err on the side of caution than not.
I guess I would only question when funds then need to be moved from line item to line item with the wording saying may, and this discussion about it will it then be the expectation that before funds are moved from one line item to another, is the board going to have to approve that, or like is there going to be processes put in place before that happens because of these conversations, or will we still work under the same? Will I still work under the same authority that I've worked under before, where I'm able to move the funds from line item to line item?
Yeah, it's the same policy that we've had in place, right? So how it's been functioning, I personally don't see an issue as far as how we have been functioning, right? However, it does leave us some leeway if there is an issue that arises. Whereas if we don't have it, it is just a definitive, well, I was authorized to do it. So again, nothing about Dr. Frazier is in my mind regarding my issue with this. It is about previous experience and what may happen in the future. And we always just, I think, err on the side of caution.
I can do some work on that and provide that. And if board members would like to send any of their thoughts and beliefs on cultural competency, we can then put something together to put a true definition in place for West Point schools, or we can wait until our strategic plan session. We have a work session to be able to discuss that. To discuss that, we can wait until then to clean out that definition.
So, are there, since this is from the VSBA, might there be other school systems not too far away that you would be able to get ideas about how they are defining it? Not that we would follow their lead necessarily, but just that we would have other examples of their definitions.
Oh, I definitely can contact other school divisions for both of those, for a working definition that they may have as some examples for cultural competency, and we can also see what other divisions are doing around their major classification for superintendent's authority for funding.
I think that'd be helpful.
I can do some research.
All right, so that needs to stay under study, and we will revisit that in July.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can move on to action items. Our action items are, first is we consider approving expenditures and receive revenue reports. Do I have a motion to do so?
Board members, just be mindful that there was an updated expenditure report. A fifth register was done today as we're trying to finish up FY23 funds. So that was added on one of those items was the trailer that had been requested. So we finally got that quoted in order to move forward on that. I know there was some discussion about the expenditure for Crabtree. Just remembering that I stated last month that the checks would be written, but we would be holding those checks because hopefully as soon as we receive the report, we can send them, but we wanted to lock that in under the FY23 funds.
Where are the chairs? Is that for like the library? The school specialty? Is that the library
No,
chairs?
Those are new chairs that will be going in 2 classrooms at the high school.
Other questions? We have a motion to approve the expenditures and revenue reports as presented. So moved. Do you have a second? Second. All in favor? All right, our next is approving cafeteria expenditures. Any questions? Do you have a motion to approve cafeteria expenditures as shown?
Move to approve as presented.
Do you have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Personnel recommendations, Dr. Frazier.
So the personnel report is provided for you in your packet, and those personnel items were discussed in closed session. So if there are no other questions, I would ask for approval on the personnel. I would also provide a quick update on the principal search. So we will begin the interview process this week for the next principal of West Point Middle School High School. We will be interviewing several candidates. The first teachers will be incorporated in that interview process, and then we will also have central office administration that is included in that interview process as well. And so we are anticipating more than one round of interviews if needed, and even a third round if needed to make that final decision. We are going to do our best to make the best possible choice for leaders for that building.
Great, thank you. All right, do I have a motion to approve the personnel recommendations as shown? So moved. Do you have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have, I believe it was one donation, and we need to consider approving that. Do I have a motion to approve the donation as shown?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Next is tuition student requests. Dr. Frazier.
Did we do the formal vote that way?
Oh, we didn't? I thought we did.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was me. Tuition request. I was trying to get from the next item and trying to miss the same thing. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
All right, so we have, so looking at our tuition, our initial tuition request, there are 3 students that we're recommending for kindergarten, 1 student that we're recommending for 2nd grade, 1 4th grader, and 1 10th grader, so 6 tuition students. These students have been vetted, and so, and you've also looked at grade level capacity, and so we're still in a good place.
Do you have a motion to approve the tuition student request? So moved. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Now, the next is approving the 23-24 consolidated application. You've seen this before?
Yep, we have. The next 2 items, so the type 3 applications who also was presented. So if board members could approve those tonight, that will be helpful. So Ms. Roach can move on in the process with those.
Do I have a motion to do so with the consolidated application? So moved. Do you have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. And the next is the 23-24 Title III application. Do I have a motion to approve that? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on, informational items.
So board members have the informational items that are in your packet. I would like to also include that we are working through our weapons of detection. We've had 1 demonstration, and we also have a trip planned to go to another school division that has another unit in place. And so that superintendent has invited us over to view that unit and to test that out. So we plan to be able to make a recommendation to the board as our next steps at our July meeting. At our July meeting, we will also, it's also our plan to bring forth that Narcan policy, so we can check some of those things out before school starts that were on our safety list.
Great, thank you.
Is it possible to get a year-end discipline report at the next meeting?
Yes, ma'am, we can work on it.
Okay. Do we have any delegations?
No, it's not good. I don't know if you want to entertain.
Oh, can I chime in?
Yes, you may,
Oh.
but you have to come to the vote.
Okay, I can do that.
And if you can state your name and address just for the record so we can.
You ready? It's Molly with a Y. Booker. 2740 ODI Street, West Point, Virginia. 231.
Thank you, Ms. Booker.
Okay, I'm not sure of the codes that y'all were talking about changing, but in regards to the may or the is wording, and I appreciate everybody's discussion and the thought processes on it, and Leslie's input is very strong and coming from an accounting background and just people in general, working with people, you really have to protect the school system, and it gives a protection for the superintendent to not be over questioned as well. Like, why did you do this? And it's not just about protecting you guys, he's a value too, so you want to give him that level of understanding that you want him to come to you if there's an issue. So I appreciate your input on that, because I agree, it's very easy to get mixed between, one word or another, and that holds a lot of value. May be allowed to move the money is a huge difference than is allowed, or, so that's just my feedback as somebody that works in the same environment, I wouldn't agree with changing it. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, no further delegations. Future agenda items for July, we'll approve the code of conduct as referred tonight. We will have an SOL testing data presentation, spring athletics and extracurricular activities update. We will come back to the policy updates, and I would just recommend that board members set up a time to come in and look at the crisis manual. Our next regular meeting date is July 18th, and it will be here at the school board office at 6 p.m. With no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.